here are the trucks I took off of this engine. I'm going to check them now to see if they run smoothly. I've got the power off over here now, so I'm just going to check to see with the power off if they will roll down the track without any hesitation. And yeah, they're in good shape. A lot of times the plastic doesn't affect these because a lot of times there isn't much lubrication on them. There's a very, 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 very light lubricant on here. And even though it is the same stuff, it doesn't affect it the same way. And I find that you can easily get away with simply putting just a dab of your favorite hobby grease. I use a product from Woodland Scenic's Workbench collection called Hobby Lube. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to do a little lubrication on this while I have it out. I could do this by simply running the engine back and forth, but since I have it out and since I can actually see what's going on, I'd rather just get it done now. So again, take the Hobby Lube, put a little dab in here. With the gear grease, I tend to be a little bit more liberal with these, or generous with it, because I want to make sure that it's well lubricated, especially for an engine that's been sitting around this long. The gears themselves are not dry, but it'll certainly not hurt them to have a little extra lubricant after sitting around for so long. I'm not going to put a ton on here again, but I am going to put more than I normally would just to make sure that all my gears are white. I don't need a ton of white grease, just a little bit, and there it is. That's a lot better now. These won't quite roll by themselves because there is a shaft in here that has to spin. That's actually pretty good right now. Anyway, I'm going to do that with the next shaft, and that'll with the next truck, and that'll do it for this video. What I'm going to do now is work on unlocking the other shaft and then reassembling it to make sure it works. Now, then I'll get to reassembling the locomotive to make sure all is well. See, this one's actually in worse shape. Don't assume because one truck works well that every one will work that way. You want to go through all of them and make sure they work the way they should. People criticize grease, but I like it better. As long as you use a properly synthetic grease, it'll actually work out better, I find, than the other products that are normally used in here. And that's basically going to be it. Gonna get in here with something skinny so I can move some of this grease around. Sometimes it doesn't quite go where you want it. Good. This one's probably might need a little bit more intensive care on me. Oops, starting to get a little bit better now. A lot of times, just by running it back and forth, you can get it to start to roll by itself. So 2 rolls in that direction. That's working much better now. There's one little notch of that old grease in there, which I just knocked out. What will happen a lot of times is the new grease will help rejuvenate the old stuff, and you can get away with doing it. It's not the smoothest rolling truck, but it's a lot better than it was. I'm going to have to keep working on this, though, make sure it's as smooth as I can get it. And anywho, that's the basic first procedure on this. Once I have this done, I can then move on to the next phase, which is going to be to prepare this engine to have its new decoder and get it on the rails. Okay, folks, I'm back, and I got the shaft unjammed. And how I did that, and not recommend it, was to actually run hot water from a hot water tap right over it for a few seconds, and it managed to unlock it and get it to spin. And then, of course, I did my usual lubrication on it, and now it turns fine. Now, I'm almost set to start putting this locomotive back together so I can put it away temporarily, as I'm going to have to wait to get the parts together for it. But There is one more thing I have to do on it. I want to go ahead now and actually oil the motor up because it's right in front of me. The motor does seem to spin well enough, but I can't get access to it normally this easily, so I'm going to take advantage of that. Again, you take an engine out of your car. Nice time to take care of the maintenance items. Good time to do it here. I get the bearings. There's one right here in front of the motor and one behind the motor. Get my oil syringe thingy in there. Spin the shaft back and forth a few times. Just put my oil back. I don't want to have this stuff drip out on me. Manually, because I don't have a motor, because I don't have anything hooked up. That's immediately looking better. It turned all right at the begin with, but now it's even better. It's starting to really turn smoothly. That's what I want to see. There's no float on the bearing. It's working really nice. And that will about do it. Even rolls a little bit by itself, which is good. Now it's time to reassemble this. Again, the procedure is basically the opposite of taking it apart. Just remember, again, the bearings on this one, I believe, go all the way at the end, so your worm gear housing is always on the back of the truck. Positions. Anywho, that's it. And then just slip it in position. There's a little pin that mounts on the truck, that mounts right on top of the truck. The truck has a hole in it. The pin is located underneath the body and everything else. Anyway, here it is. And as you can see now, as opposed to before, this will actually slide back and forth. The reason why I can do that right now is I haven't put my worm gears in yet, which I'm going to next. Here's shaft number 1. Thread the shaft through the two towers over here. There's like 2 towers mounted over here. If you will, it's the way the frame is designed. Feed it in until you get it to hook up with the motor. You'll know it because the motor will suddenly turn once it's connected. Next, carefully position the motor so that the 2 bearing shafts, the 2 bearings on the end, for the end cap for the two bearings, I should say, for the worm gear are squared, and drop them into position. They'll drop into position once you have them aligned. Down, down. There it goes. It does turn. Take the worm gear cover, drop it down, and gently make sure you line it up right where the 2 stops are on both sides, and gently press on it until it clips into position. There we go. That's the first shaft done. It's working. The shaft is spinning. We're good with that. Now the other shaft goes in until it picks up, until the shaft actually makes contact. There's a sort of a universal joint here, planetary gear, if you will. Looks like sort of the or T gear, or the moons of Saturn gear, whatever you want to call it. Has that weird sort of T shape. Line it up. Square the blocks, which is what I'm going to do now with my pliers. Make sure they're perfectly centered, and then gently press down once you're done with it. Okay, that works. I tested to make sure that the shaft will rotate correctly. Now all I have to do is take this dab of grease more on top of the worm gear. Just a habit I have to make sure that's properly lubricated. And here's my other worm gear assembly. Let me just make sure this other worm gear top, let me just clean that out a little bit. Then I will place it back in there. Yep. And so that does it. Now it's back to assembled. Now I just want to quickly test it. See if I have the junker over here, and yes I do. This is a decoder that is basically not suitable for operation, not really fit to be. Okay, and as we see now, it does work, and it runs really well. I've got my junky decoder hooked in there just to test it. It runs beautifully, in fact, compared to before. Remember, it just hummed before, like the seller described it does, and now it runs beautifully. So with all that done, I now have a fully functioning locomotive. I obviously am not ready for DCC and sound on this just yet. I'm gonna have to wait until my decoder's here until I decide how I'm gonna do it. Meantime, though, this engine's in pretty good shape. What I'm gonna do now to keep all my parts together is to go ahead and reassemble it. Easy way of telling, by the way, where the front of the engine is these two holes in the bottom here. This is where your cab screws down. What I'm going to do is just slide this on top and put it with my projects to the back over here, and that'll do it. I'm going to have it sit all the way down on the frame because I don't want anything else to get damaged. There we go. I'll just take this and gently slide it over here to the back, and I have it now for safekeeping. And when I'm ready to work on it, I'll be all set.